New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Well, I don't know why that video stopped, but we're 8 seconds early. So, Tracy Brown here. Welcome to Inclusive Church with Tracy Brown from Stained Glass Spirit. That's so funny. I'm laughing at myself, right? Because I'm watching the countdown. 11, 10, 9, 8. Okay, I got 8 seconds before I have to smile. And then here I am. Oh, live broadcasts. I love them. And you get to see it live and no editing, no fixing. You just get whatever happens. So welcome to Inclusive Church. If this is your first time, every week we get together and talk about things that impact leaders who are committed to creating spiritual communities where oneness does not require sameness. And that's not always easy. Even when we're really clear how important it is, we're dealing with people and we're dealing with some really complex challenges, issues, and opportunities. So, you may know when I have a guest, we tend to go 50 to 55 minutes. When I don't have a featured guest, I try to focus on what's a tool, a technique, a tip that I can share with you in 30 minutes-ish or less, so that you can take in that one thing, think about it, or practice it, or apply it, and then you're not overburdened with a whole lot to think about or 5 things to take into consideration all at the same time. So today the focus is on finding refuge as a resource for you. Though it's a book titled Finding Refuge, Heart Work for Healing Collective Grief. And the author is Michelle Cassandra Johnson, and I love this book. In fact, as I was reminded when I pulled it off the shelf to share with you today, I was reminded that at one point I considered doing like a book study, and I think I might do that in September, because now is a good time. And after I tell you about the book, then you will know why I think now might be a good time to do the book study. And yes, I'm on candid camera, like, oh, I'm live. Thanks, Anita, for being here. And I'm sure you laughed just as I did that. Oh, it is a surprise. And that's how it goes on live shows. So if you two are watching and you want to say hello in the chat or in the comment section, please let us know who you are, where you're watching from, and throughout this brief time together today, if you have a specific question or example, please share that as well. Now, two things with inclusive church that I always say, and some of you are sitting there probably saying it with me or for me, but I'm going to cut to a really short version. It's inclusive church because the church is the people, not the building. So we're really clear about that. We're talking about the people, not a piece of property. And two, and when I refer to leaders, I'm not just referring to ministers. I'm talking about everyone who leads a team or contributes a significant amount of money or teaches a class or is doing anything that is providing leadership for your church. So let's talk about finding refuge, hard work for healing collective grief. Um, in an inclusive church, one of the things that happens that we sometimes don't consciously think about is that we are together experiencing grief over the way things are or the way different people are treated or people from different identity groups are treated. And we complain about that sometimes. And we often do spiritual bypass around that sometimes. For example, we complain about disparities that exist in society, and we're going to come together, from a spiritual perspective and pray for something different. But we complain about the societal experience, right? Or we complain, or we hear complaints from people in our churches who feel unseen or unvalued, and we focus on the complaint. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we say, well, our mission is to be inclusive, and here are the reasons why, and we refuse to look at anything that's in the way of that or anything that creates a distraction or barrier to that vision or that purpose or that goal. And in doing so, we miss the opportunity to truly heal. And so I love this book, Finding Refuge, because Michelle Cassandra Johnson does a really extraordinary job of reminding us of personal grief and collective grief, and then offers spiritual practices throughout the book in order to heal, right? Heal that grief. And in the forward, not in the forward, in the introduction to the book, um, the author shares the motivation around writing the book, and it does go back to her experience after Trayvon Martin was killed and after George Zimmerman was acquitted. And she tells and shares the story about how the night that George Zimmerman was acquitted, there was this wave of disbelief and grief and pain and hurt that I'm going to say, in my words, that she didn't know was there. Like it surprised her the depth of the grief. And at that point, you know, invited her to really look at what was going on for her and then for people that she was serving and people around her and people she engaged with, and how this was a collective thing, not just limited to the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman specifics, but with everything that was going on politically, with everything that was going on in society as well. And so she wrote, I know many are feeling shattered and in pieces at this time, not just in response to the loss of Trayvon and so many others, or how many people with less proximity to power are devalued, but also in response to all that feels overwhelming at this time in our country and in our world. We are holding grief in our bodies and bones, often in isolation. And yet, our grief isn't isolated, it is pervasive. Now, this book was published in 2021. So this was quite a bit of time after Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman experience. And so I love that that's an anchor that most of us who are adults can connect to. But she makes a really good point that it's so much bigger than just that one narrative. In the foreword, the author who wrote the foreword for the book also quotes Michelle. Um, and this quote, I think, is central or core to us choosing to grieve together in an inclusive spiritual community. Here's the quote. We are living during a time where it is important for us all to embrace the practice of collective care. We are living during a time where remembering we are precious to one another and remembering that all parts of our ecosystem are precious to us might allow us to heal the fragmentation that comes from living in a culture that doesn't allow us to be whole or see ourselves as part of the whole. What would it be like for us to embody a responsibility for our collective hive? What would it be like to create spaces for us to grieve what has been lost as a result of our own forgetting? That we are interconnected and part of a fragile and beautiful ecosystem, shared and composed of sentient beings whose survival is as important as our own. How might we begin to break down systems that separate us from remembering that we are part of a hive and that we have different roles to ensure our collective liberation and survival? What would it feel like to be devoted to the liberation of all? I love this quote. It's a little long. It's not just, a one sentence quotation. But I love this passage because in the context of inclusive churches, that's what we are committing to do. We are committing to be about the liberation of all. We are committing to be about the liberation of all together. And that, your liberation is as important to me as my own. And my liberation is as important to you as your own. And so in an inclusive church, that's how we're living, or that's what we're intending. And so this book does a really, really good job. Now, you may have noticed in that last quoted passage that she refers to hive and hives a couple times. And throughout the book, there are some metaphors using bees and beehives and bee colonies, and that's woven throughout in such a sweet, perfect way to give us something to focus on other than just how we as humans may tend to behave, especially in this day and age where it seems like division and disparity and polarization is more rewarded than being a colony of interconnected beings that support each other as well as the overall colony. So I also love this book because of that. And another reason I love this book is definitely because Michelle Cassandra Johnson includes spiritual practice, both individual and collective, throughout the book. So I'm smiling internally because as I'm sharing with you the reasons I love this book, there's a voice in my head that's also saying, and this is why in September you need to lead a conversation about it. And this is why in September you need to bring people together to talk about this book. And right? It's like I'm talking to you and God is talking to me, right? There's that intuitive voice. So I might as well just commit to that verbally now. And after today's um, episode, then I'm going to go look at my calendar and I'm going to choose a day of the week and a time. And if you too are interested in learning more about this book, then we can read it or reread it together. So, what else do I want to share from this book? The way that it is um, organized is to go to the root of the issue and then spiritual practice. There's a great chapter on wholeness and what that means for the individual and the collective, enlarging our hearts so that we can pay attention to what's important to us individually and also collectively. There is an entire chapter on the hive mind that if you're not familiar with bees and bee colonies and how they work, it will answer any of the questions that you might have about that. And throughout the book, she includes at the beginning of each section a quote. So, for example, and before the chapter on enlarged hearts, which is really about moving into this bigger place of feeling what is happening to yourself and others. The quote at the beginning of this chapter is this one from Martin Prechtel. Grief is praise. Grief is praise because it is the natural way love honors what it misses. Grief is praise because it's the natural way love honors what it misses. Martin Prechtel. And it's a reminder, right? The whole book is about the hard work for healing the collective grief of humanity, of healing the collective group of spiritually grounded people who see what is going on in the world, healing the collective grief that we all share, maybe from a different perspective, but we all are impacted by disparities in our society. We are all impacted by the perceptions and stereotypes that people have about our identity group, no matter what identity group that is. We are all affected by losing that sense of wholeness that we spiritually teach is the essential nature for each one of us. But when our life experience is different from the absolute truth, right, there's that gap in there, and there can be grief for losing the ideal and how the ideal is actually replaced by our daily experience. And so um, Michelle Johnson uses these quotes about grief to usher us into this usher us into the pathway back to the wholeness. Another one of the quotes is, "There is something in the depths of our being that hungers for wholeness." It's a Thomas Merton quote from the No Man is an Island. But yeah, there is something in the depths of our very being that hungers for wholeness. We know that wholeness is the truth. And so, for those of us who do focus on inclusion, because we believe that that is a divine design, that spirit created the diversity on purpose, and that everyone that spirit has created has a purpose and is part of the whole and is whole, perfect, and complete. It's painful when I personally experience this gap between what I know is spiritually true and what my human experience is. But I know that others are experiencing that gap as well. It may be that they're experiencing the gap because there is judgment about their gender identity or their sexual orientation. Maybe there is a gap between true wholeness and love and unity that is the result of their identity based on age group or generation or the language they speak. And in our spiritual communities, yes, we have a common foundation because we are coming together to study and teach and practice some shared belief system or shared principles and shared spiritual practices. But that does not eliminate the challenge that is also true in our human experience. So, again, I'm recommending this book to you if you are wanting to either personally, as an individual, or as a leader in a church, do some work around healing the collective grief that is the result of living in the 21st century societies we live in. So stay tuned. I am sure in this moment. I wasn't sure 24 minutes ago, but I am sure I'm going to offer an opportunity for us to go through this book together beginning sometime in September and take 5 weeks or maybe 6 weeks to read and do spiritual practice together and talk about how we can apply the contents of this book in the spiritual communities that each one of us is a part of. So that's today's Toolkit Tuesday version of the Inclusive Church with Tracy Brown. If you want more information about the work that I'm doing related to inclusive churches, then please go visit stainedglassspirit.net, or you can purchase the book Stained Glass Spirit on Amazon, either or both of those, or just come back every Tuesday at noon Mountain Time and hang out with me right here on the New Thought Media Network, talking about what it takes. What does it really take in order to build, maintain, and sustain an inclusive church? Thanks for joining me today. I will see you again next week or sometime soon right here on Inclusive Church, New Thought Media Network.
Thanks for watching. The Inclusive Church with Tracy Brown. Join us again next week at 12 noon Mountain Time.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network. Come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.